Greetings, and everyone. Welcome to our first roundtable of GatherVerse XREvolve, where we deal in the explorations of the future. Where we have our roundtable guests, and we ask that you unmute your mics, and that we prepare to be able to introduce each one of you briefly, and then we'll proceed to move on forward because we have so much to explore and there's so much to go over. We're happy to have all of you with us today that are coming from different places around the world, and we have a lot to go. And we have a lot to see. We need to make sense in a little bit of time what it means when we begin to talk about extended reality. Are we talking headsets? Are we talking experiences? Are we talking creativity? I suspect that we're talking all that and more. Now we'll introduce our guests, and I'll go and introduce everyone, and then we're leaping in. There's a sufficient amount of bio information that you can find on each of our guests. With us, we have Dr. Messina Morris coming to us from Morehouse, a professor, an extraordinaire, international and national speaker, Rosario Casas, also an international and national speaker, Nick Van Breda, an expert in his craft, an extreme technologist, a community developer, Terry Proto, a connoisseur and master of marketing when it comes to XR and working with businesses around the world on this technology, Maria Villar, an advocate for women leadership and a women leader herself, and a technologist, Ippolito Caradonna, a molecular biologist and technologist, and Rebecca Wade of the same, in dealing with business development when it comes to the financial engines and product distribution and development when it comes to these technologies. Panel, we greet you all. With that said, we'll start and we'll begin to explore an excursion. When we talk about what is XR, how will it reform our everyday life in the next 10 years, Maria? Let's go. Maria, for some reason, we can't hear you. Can everyone hear her? We'll figure it out. Let's make the jump. Rebecca, you're up, please.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Fabulous. All right. Well, hi everyone. I think the term XR is really interesting actually, because I've been doing a lot of research into over the last couple of years, and obviously interacting with tech professionals and educators on a daily basis in my role, and really just learning that XR really encompasses kind of all of that digital technology, from virtual reality to the augmented reality to the mixed reality. And I don't really think there's a limit to where it goes. And there's new kind of bonus element of AI coming into the play as well, and kind of seeing where that goes. And over the next decade, I think we're at the start of a really interesting period of time in technology and where this development is going, and the accessibility of technology to not just, kind of folks in technological professions, but to the general consumer as well, and everyone, with mobile phones and being able to access technology in the palm of your hand is really fascinating.
Sure, of course, indeed. And then Terry, since we're talking about this and describing when we talk about XR and how it will reform everyday life in the next 10 years, what does that mean to you from your business lens and what you're looking at?
Right. So, one of the ways we like to explain it to people, it's, Rebecca gave the formal definition of what is XR and how it relates to AR, VR, MR. But one simplest way we like to explain it is that at the core, it's really simple. It's moving like the digital devices, the internet, like all the interactions we've had so far were in 2D. They were limited to a flat screen. And now we are moving to 3D, and that's changing everything because we humans live in a 3D world. And so it's expanding exponentially the activities you can do with your computer, your devices, because all of a sudden you're not flat. All of a sudden we're in 3D. And one of the things when people ask us, what can you do for business? You can do anything and everything. It's the definition of Apple. There's an app for that. But my favorite, funniest definition is like, another 3D world? Well, it's called planet Earth. And technically, anything you could do on planet Earth in 3D, you could do in XR. So, it's ridiculous.
Indeed. And Maria, welcome back. Let's give your mic check another chance. When we start thinking about what the untapped potential of XR holds, when it comes to the global role of communication, community development. I'm seeing a manner of different communities and organizations and nonprofit organizations that are out there that have a number of different community members that are participating and expressing in the great development when it comes to these type of immersive technologies today. And now we're bringing and introducing artificial intelligence to this schematic. It's always been there, but now certainly it's more present. Maria, what are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, can you hear me?
Perfectly. Welcome back.
Thank God. Okay, perfect. So XR, well, I think I speak for all of us saying that 2024 is definitely so far the year of XR. What we're seeing now, it's industry 4.0. So definitely there's a merge between digital, physical, and biological systems. So with XR, I think that we really can just bring everyone across cultures, across diversity. And we also, when we think about XR, I think it's very democratic because everyone can be at the same place. And there's no language barrier, there's no culture barrier. So in terms of communication, I think at this point, immersive technologies are the most democratic technologies when it comes to that.
Indeed. And Nick, let's kind of leap into this for a moment, because it seems to me that in the past 30 years, an audience, chime in, what do you feel like has been the most effective technology? But that's not the question at hand, because it seems to me over at least the past 30 years, perhaps even 40, that the greatest development of technology that's been introduced to us is the power of communication. Look, as we all said, 10 years ago, this wasn't happening. It just wasn't. There would be a lot of latency. The Wi-Fi capacity, broadband, just certainly we wouldn't be able to enjoy, to be able to sit here with all of you that are sitting with us and joining us from here in the U.S. and around the world. Nick, as someone that has a number of different communities, and I know what communication on a greater sense means for the work that you've been doing for years now, what does this mean when we talk about the untapped potential and the role of global communication?
Yeah, I think it means a lot. I think we have all figured out through the Corona pandemic that we were able to use VR headsets to actually be together with anyone around the world, whatever time zone it was be. And I imagined the power of XR when we were organizing Burning Man in XR. So Burning Man was happening in 40 different platforms, some in 2D, but most of them were in 3D. And every artist was bringing up their art in a 3D format, as a object file or STL or GLB, and we were trying to put them into different worlds. And that at the time I saw like so much untapped potential in forms of communication, in how we would like to express ourselves, also in giving youth a stage, giving youth the power to start drawing in 3D, for example, with Tilt Brush, now with plenty of free tools out there. And giving them the opportunity to express themselves in such a immersive way that they can easily, without having to talk, express how they are feeling and receive coaching from others in a 3D world, like Polycam. We have seen so many different communication platforms out there that use AI and XR together now, and I'm actually trying them out every day, these new tools. Whether you are 3D scanning, like my baby that has been born 5 months ago, I'm 3D scanning him for his own diary. When he's 18, he can walk back 18 years and see his growth, actually touch him as a baby and see him as a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, and more. And I think this is really exciting that you can 3D scan now with your mobile phone. You don't need a very expensive 3D scanner anymore. And that you can animate those with AI nowadays, that you can turn them into stories, like we can turn them into bedtime stories for my little child, and then give him the role of being the main person in the story. Like these kind of things we never thought about these. So I'm super excited about XR for communication, and especially now AI is kicking in as a easier way without any programming skills to turn your stories into a more immersive story or more interactive story. So I see a lot of potential nowadays for everyone without any technical background to get on board. And that's especially what Maria said, this year is going to be very exciting.
So in many ways, Nick, we've become more accessible than we've ever been before, but in some areas, the accessibility is still severely lacking in literacy. And it's one of the reasons why we're here today, Rosario, and we're talking about this. And Nick, congratulations. We welcome all of our GatherVerse babies.
Thank you.
Of course. So when we talk about this, Rosario, going to what Nick and everyone else has been expressing in terms of accessibility, that we have utility and tools in ways that we've never been have had before. What does this mean on the business proprietary side with all the things that you do in business, with all the different businesses? When we look at this emergence of XR, and we're going to take away the qualification of saying AI and XR, certainly bring it up for, but we're looking to merge these two together of evolution, because they are certainly, in many ways, one and the same. Those could raise contestment, and feel free, but this is what we're looking at from this lens. But Rosario, what are the implications of XR for business moving forward in this AI era?
Well, I really think that, and you mentioned that very well, during the last years, we gave names, specific names and divisions to each one of these components that right now are starting to converge. But finally, what it means is the possibility to run data on top of the reality, like simulations on near real time. We can gather data from everywhere. We can analyze data from everywhere in any industry. So let's imagine, to give two very different examples, but just to exemplify the thing, let's imagine a mayor of a small town that has few resources, that is not a rich town, walking through the streets and understanding the problems of the town, imagining the future of it, mixing the data that is public from the citizens, from the homes, from the health issues, etc., and seeing this public space, the neighborhoods, and thinking different, comparing that with a spreadsheet to make decisions, that's completely different. It changes the possibility of dreaming different cities. That's one example. And the other one, let's say that education will completely change as a business. It's not anymore just having people that goes for some years to the place. It's just education in everything. Training workforce will be completely different, because you can train people in the field while having the experts also working together with them, taking the advantage of these technologies. So for me, it's a phenomenal digital layer connecting the physical world with the digital world, or with the data behind everything, and giving superpowers to each human here.
Indeed, and thank you for sharing that, Rosario. We're coming back to each of you in just a moment. But Dr. Morris, we're rolling into your way, because we're talking about this, and in a lot of ways, this pairing of so many different emerging technologies that abide within the eco habitat, and the use of it therein, and with the instrumental work that you do. You know, a lot of people say that we're still waiting for XR and the metaverse. And listen, the metaverse is good for the time now present. XR is good for the time now present, because we have someone here amongst many of you that are doing and have already done incredible things with these technologies. But Dr. Morris, there's really not too many people that I know that have had the opportunity to be able to do the things that you've been afforded to do already, with the relationships that you enjoy here in Silicon Valley at different companies with students and chemistry and so forth and so on. But when we talk about the impact, as Rosario just talked about, what does it mean for the medical field, and what does it mean for sciences, which we'll touch on that with Ippolito Caradonna coming up next. Dr. Morris, what does this mean when we talk about the advancement and societal benefit of these technologies today and moving forward?
For me, it's exciting because it was a restoration of joy for me. It was being able to think beyond this reality, because really, when this project took off, not when it was thought about, because we had considered doing this, creating this virtual campus, this immersive learning environment for our students prior to COVID. But when it took off, it was COVID. So this restored my joy in the educational system and allowed me to offer something different and more engaging to my students. One of the things that I really appreciate about XR and this technology and the connectivity that we have and access to that is that my students get to experience an entirely different world with presence. So they get to have me in the room while they're exploring new technologies. We have a digital twin that Victory XR built of our campus. So our students are able to be in a familiar environment, which is so important when you're talking about culturally responsive spaces and being able to see yourself imagined in a world that you're unfamiliar with. And because this is on such the cutting, bleeding edge, and Morehouse College does cater to 2,200 young Black men that are matriculating towards a 4-year degree, it's really important for me for them to see themselves reimagined in this space. So the digital twin was a necessity, even though they can see other spaces and other places and other locations. I'm also putting in their hands the opportunity to learn all of what they need to know to build these virtual worlds, how to actually integrate these technologies together. How is it affecting intellectual property now? So what's the business side of this? What's the entrepreneurial side of this? What does it mean to find your lowest barrier of entry into this technologically adept workforce that we have no idea what the next jobs look like? My job didn't exist. I'm a Metaversity director. Who this job didn't exist. So it's like we're preparing our young people for an exciting new future that is beyond this reality, but it allows us an opportunity for the very first time to be creative and not just to define the future, but to also design the future. And so it's putting the autonomy and agency back in the hands of the people, the young people who define the future. So I'm excited to be a facilitator of that, and excited to see what's going to happen when we transform these antiquated learning models that we call classrooms into metaversive teaching and learning academies, where we're actually training educators to be practitioners that are technologically adept, that are able to disseminate content in a way that is going to engage students better. And so that's what I do also as founder and CEO of Metaverse United, is working with educators, training them, building communities of practice, building the professional development out so that they will be ready to usher in Generation Alpha, because Generation Alpha is ready. Listen, I just did an event. They are ready. Okay. It's us that have to get ready. And so I am helping us, Generation X millennials too, because some of us millennials, not where we need to be either. Getting us to where we need to be able to facilitate the genius that is coming.
Indeed. And thank you for sharing that, Dr. Morris. We'll be coming back to you shortly. Ippolito Caradonna, when we talk about this impact, this new way forward of invention, it's suffices to say, let me say this, audience, what does XR mean to you? Define it and share with this, share with a colleague and neighbor, and share with someone. But I would submit to you, whatever XR means to you today, XR is being disrupted, and it has a nature of disrupting its own self. Whenever these high-powered tools are introduced to the ecosystem, things begin to change and they begin to evolve, if you will. That certainly is no different from this time and era, Ippolito, and as you remove your mic.
Yeah.
It's this time and era of discovery. I believe that we're at a point in time where we are about to see, as we're seeing now, a level of discovery that we've never seen before, that escapes the things of novels and things that we've known and intentions and things that have been prototyped from our elders of generations that's been developing and helped bring us to where we're at today. But the level of discovery, and you deal in a science in an incredible way. What does this mean for societal impact in the advancement of what could happen?
Oh, wow. Excuse me. Yeah. I mean, this is everything. All the panelists have already set the stage. This is a primer for the way in which we build up a society, right? The way in which we evolve a society. Think about what Dr. Morris just mentioned. The minds, the fertile ground this is about stewardship. This is about the minds that are coming up to roadblocks that they don't even know are there yet. Think about how we train up, at least in my sphere, dealing with XR in OGLab. Think about how we train up a scientist. Now, we've done this for years. We're talking about antiquated systems, like Dr. Morris said. I wanted to start clapping. I had to contain myself a little bit. Dr. Morris, okay, because I'm about to start throwing things. But what's so important about what we're pressing into is that the NIH, the National Institute of Health, the National Science Foundation, they've all done well, you know, to train up young minds. And we have, you can see them out in the world today. The new inventions, the science, the historic group of COVID-19 vaccines. These all came from minds that have been trained by these systems, right? But I've seen it firsthand, Chris, side by side with a graduate student at UCSF that's just buried under just piles and piles of documentation, piles and piles of this 2D realm in which they have to navigate the culture of publish or perish, and I need to get into the next peer-reviewed journal, and I have these years and years. It creates a type of bitterness. It creates a nihilism that I don't want to have to go and repeat this experiment 1,000 more times, because that's what it takes. And one of the things that was brought up, the pandemic opened our eyes to a lot of things. People didn't understand what scientists go through until it actually meant a vaccine that was going to save them from life or death. Now science has become in the forefront. Okay, this is important, what's happening in the lab. But what people don't consider is what happens when scientists make a mistake. What happens when the scientist doesn't have the perception because they're working a 12-hour shift? How can we use this technology to align the perception, not only to prevent mistakes for safety reasons, but prevent mistakes for the billions of dollars that we're putting in to a particular experiment? How about, like we're talking about the fertile minds, how about gamifying the lab and making it exciting to go in and try this experiment 1,000 times? So this is the type of culture shift that we're talking about. And like you're saying, disruptive, is because now, especially with my technology, which I do a shameless plug, but what we're seeing now is what Rosario was mentioning about data and being able to visualize it. We're now creating data out of visualization. So now what's happening in the lab with one scientist is data that's fed into a model that's transferred like hollow practice. And what we focus on is the holoportation. I can collaborate with a scientist all the way in Belgium from here in the States. So now the carbon footprint is impacted. Now I don't have to get on a plane and risk exposure. Now I have a virtual environment which I can share ideas, share thoughts, collaborate in a space that's fostering this type of creativity. It's changing the way in which we think about science, Chris. It's changing the way in which we think about it. Yeah.
It's changing the way that we think about a lot of things. It's changing the way that we start thinking about perceptual sciences. It's changing the way that we reduce cognitive load and to be able to experience it. What Dr. Tom Furness talks about is ambient perception, being that we're not only perceiving just with our eyes, but when we're fully immersed and we start to think about all the things that are around us in hyper-realistic, immersive, simulated environments, there's a whole different narrative at hand. But I want to stay on this topic. But Terry, the reason that this next question is so important is because we talk about education and learning, and we tend to think, as Dr. Morris talked about, with students. But we're in need to be able to educate Fortune 50, Fortune 500, big business, public sector, private sector. And I know that you are one that's been working with businesses, helping guide them towards the next step, because the reality is there's no blueprint for the way that we're headed. There's no case study for the way that we're headed, because what happens when the technology becomes more advanced than the technologist? And so in a lot of ways that's happened. And so the technologists that we have here today, Nick and Maria, Rebecca, Rosario, and so forth, they're the ones that are helping, and you all are the ones that are in the audiences with us today, helping guide public and private sector, cross sector to move forward. But when it comes to education and learning, Terry, how do we equip with things that we are just now understanding and some things that are so new and so fresh? How do we guide, and what apparatus is built and set for us to guide business towards what is today and tomorrow when it comes to these very and profound emerging technologies?
Okay, so that's a very complex question, and I'm going to try to give it like a 2-minute answer because I could ramble forever. But back to what Ippolito was saying, I think one of the most exciting thing about this technology is this acronym called RIDE, for VR training. And it's great because VR training is fantastic for situations that are rare or impossible or dangerous or expensive to create in the real world. And so when you talk to businesses interested in implementing XR, and especially training, back to what we're talking, training and education, it's really all about the use cases, and it's really all about the benefits and the ROI. And usually when a company starts to develop and implement, it's starting with the most important use cases. And we keep talking about disrupting things and game-changing use cases. And one of the cases I like from one of our clients, which I think makes the point perfectly, VR training for fuel reloading, like for you're driving a truck that's full of petrol and it needs to be refueled, and you want to do it well, because if you fail, well, the truck may blow up and kill 5 people at the station or more. And so the training is extremely important because it's expensive, it's dangerous. And for the companies that's deploying it, it's not so much about how much you're going to spend building this XR. It's the ROI is actually on the how much do you save? And in this case, it's not just money. It's a lot of money, obviously, because we're talking of petrol, but it's lives. And so how do you do for all of these guys? You do it one use case per one use case. And you start to build and you start to, explain, okay, you were doing those things this way before, and now you're going to do it that way before. And those are all the benefits that you're going to get from that. And out of all those benefits, this is the ROI, this is the return you're going to get. And the cool thing about this technology, what everyone keeps saying, is that it's so game-changing that the ROI often is ridiculous. We were talking before about not traveling, and I'm talking about saving lives. And so, I could go on forever, but that's how you do it. And part of the challenge, I guess, is that because there are so many use cases, I was taking this planet Earth analogy, it's very difficult for people to wrap their head around it, because XR technology is 3D, and for most people, 3D is coming out of video games. And so it's like, I'm in banking, I'm doing serious business. Like, how do I apply this thing? And you need to find and in banking, what you do, for instance, is soft skills training and training employees, having conversations with clients and employees. And so it's a very long work of going case study by case study by case studies, industry by industry by industry, to unlock those benefits and unlock this ROI.
Indeed, and it also comes hand in hand with something that Ippolito Caradonna it deals in, and perhaps many of you, in reducing human error. Extremely important where we're going and headed, and that brings us, Maria, into this thing of perception and reality and our interactions within it. Because now, when we talk about XR and we talk about the communication apparatus that's embedded within, I can now talk to machines as if I talk to a dear friend. I could talk to one day Rosario or Dr. Morris, and I could see them showing up on my iPhone, and I say, it sounds like you, and it completely looks like you at human eye resolution, but I know in my heart that that isn't you. That isn't who I'm dealing with. And so we're in an era where we talk about the codec avatar being able to suspend itself as a deep fake, if you will, or we start talking about concatenative or parametric synthesis, where we listen and the auditory is indiscernible whether I'm listening to a human or not. In fact, some of the music that we were listening to in our intro, The House of the Rising Sun, that wasn't a human. That was artificial intelligence. And I saw a lot of head nodding as the song was playing until it got disrupted. Maria, when we talk about perception, when we talk about where we're at with the immersive studios and the work that you do, what does that mean to you today?
Well, what fascinates me more about XR is that it's not just virtual reality or augmented reality. We work with 3 different technologies that offer different solutions. And I think nowadays, people in general are preferring AR. And what's interesting is that I think a month ago, Future Today Institute, you can check up, they released a report saying exactly that, because I feel that people in general, we prefer experiences when we're augmented or reality. So it's not just changing our perception. It's complementing our reality, and it's not just replacing it. It's giving us another perspective of what we're living. So I think that XR really, it's like magic, right? So in every industry, in every sector, we can really have solutions with XR that we cannot have with other technologies. And it's not that it alters our perception or replaces what we're seeing. It's more on the side like it's complementing, it's augmenting, these technologies are a way for us to see things that we couldn't see other way. And I feel that in the next 5 to 10 years, when we start using more AR glasses, for example, everything is going to change, because we're not just living, and we'll not just walk on the street. We'll have a lot of inputs that we didn't see before.
Sure.
And that's what's interesting.
Sure. And it's interesting that you just mentioned 5 to 10 years. Candidly, I can see that in 5 to 10 months, with the level of disruption and the type of products that we see introduced to the ecosystem.
I was being conservative, yeah.
As you should, and why not? Because as much as I can appreciate futurists, some to me are far few between, because your predictive analyses are severely disrupted and they're far out. And the thing that you think that won't happen for 10 years happens next month. And the thing that you think will happen next month won't happen for 10 years. I find that very interesting, Nick. And then Rebecca, will head over to you. When we start thinking about perception, audience, what do you think about this? It was just said in our private comments, go look at the movie Her once again, and how uncanny it actually is that you can have a relationship, a very interesting relationship with your artificial intelligence. Because in some ways, we talk about wellness, and this is a very interesting and at times very lonely world, and people do thirst for companionship and conversation. And now the geniuses that are tinkering around here in the West and elsewhere have made a way for us to be able to have this conversation level of AI. But not only that, we're talking about conversations, and we're reading copy content that's being rendered out through submission of an artificial intelligence or generative model or diffusion model. Nick, your child, our children, I don't have children, but our children, Alpha, and the generations to come, they're heading into a very different world of what we've ever known and what we entered into. What are your real concerns with this? What is it that you're looking at? And how might we fashion and fold ethically this technology to make sure that it's safe for them? And audience, while we're at it, what does it mean to you? Do you embrace the advancement and the rapid deployment of artificial intelligence in this way where it's so invasive in our lives? Or are you abstaining? Is this something that you're holding from? Feel free to share with whoever is around you or even in YouTube. Nick?
Yeah, I think the ethics part is going to be very important. There's more and more people studying this part on immersive technology and ethics. So Stanford and people like Paul Guardiola is doing a PhD research on this topic. It starts with the experiences I had in social VR environments like Altspace, Rec Room, VR Chat, where you're being bullied by an 8-year-old. And this is not really funny, but it's actually happening every day, every second of the time that I was in VR Chat in a public space. And Altspace actually shut that public space down after a while when it happened more and more often. But if AI is coming into place and people can actually use this for fake news purposes and misuse someone's identity, I think this is going to be a really big concern. If I'm 3D scanning my son, I would not really like someone bullying him with the 3D scan, making him into a fake avatar, running around in VR chat, bullying others. But I think the technology is there already to misuse this technology for the benefit of, I don't know what really is the benefit, but this is a big concern. I think the technology is so easy to use. If you're using Synthetica or other technologies, you've seen it, or in Wiggle, you create an animated avatar from any person that you have a photo of. It is so easy to create that I think the bullying part will be hardest one on the kids. And their digital identity is now part of who they are. You see in Fortnite that people concerned more about their clothing in the digital world than their clothing in the real world. So this identity is becoming more and more important to them, and it's so much easier to misuse it. So yeah, we have to figure out if there can be AI protectors, like algorithms that are protecting this misbehavior and giving people the opportunity to ban or kick, like the event tools we used to have in Allspace. That together with a lot of event hosts, you're able to detect this in time and then make accurate actions to make sure that the environment becomes and stays a safe place for everyone, and that people want to return. So I think this is a big concern, that if you are, for example, teaching in any of these social VR platforms and there is a big bully in the room, this first experience for students can be very bad, and getting them back on board in this environment is very hard. And
Sure.
That is also a big concern, that the technology can be also misused that easily, that getting people on board in this technology can be prevented by it. So I'm really curious about, Dr. Morris, and your opinion about how to get this bullying out of the social VR space when people have an incognito mode when they're an avatar, and they can speak up, they can say whatever they want, they can do whatever they want there, and they are not really being chased after by a police or someone else who is taking care of the safety of people.
Dr. Morris, follow up with that, please.
Right. So I am a mother of 5 sons, ranging from age 7 to 28. So I have children in multiple generations, and I have children with multiple abilities. So I have a gifted child, but I also have a son that has moderate support needs and has autism. One of the things that I really am concerned about is my son that has moderate support needs. That's a total tech guy, and he loves Bing and Copilot. Like, he's just gone, he's already immersed. Okay. So now when things start to be a little bit less able for him to discern, how can he discern what's real or what's not when I'm already dealing with a cognitive inability to identify, to socialize, to communicate? So for me, I have been doing a lot of work in how could we use this technology to be more accessible. I'm so glad that AI is now really being integrated into the space where it's meaningful, because I've always said that vulnerable populations deserve an AI buddy, especially kids who are on the spectrum, to go with you. Now that buddy may be somebody that re-navigates you out of that space. That buddy may also stand up for you. Why not? Why not have a buddy that stands up for you when you can't speak for yourself? I just believe that this needs to be a world beyond the reality that already exists. And if these mirroring things, these effects of how we have behaved, whether it's through social media or whatever, they're reflections of our own humanity. And so we can change the narrative. And I believe in us to be able to change the narrative, because I've sat on so many panels, I've talked to so many people. Sam Altman came and did a listening session in the Atlanta University Center. And my major question to him was just that. What do you do when everything becomes hard to discern what's real from what's fake? And there are multiple layers of privacy and security and considerations that people are taking into play to make sure that this landscape can be safe for everybody. But it takes all of us to join in and to train our young people on this technology. Just because they're born into it and they're digital natives does not mean that they understand the ethical implications of what they do on this, on the technology. They don't understand the implications of long screen time. I'm still a person that is considering eye development and cognitive load and all of these other things when it comes to what our young people will be experiencing when they're using these technologies, because all of them require some types of screen. So now, what are we going to do that's different to then change the way that our young people learn and it still be immersive. There are other technologies that we can't do right now because I'm a chemist, so I think about new materials powering these devices. When we making them smaller, they still need to be powered. Well, the materials that we got are gonna cause a little bit of radiation happening up around your head. I don't think you want that. So if you don't want that smoke, it's time for us to start training up scientists. See, I see molecules, and I brought the metaverse to the world because I wanted everybody else to see molecules like me. And because I'm a person that can see molecules, I believe that visual spatial intelligence of a chemist is created with the ability to be able to perceptually see these molecules in these different spaces. That's what trips most students up. And that's what makes them into better molecular scientists. And we need more of those because contrary to popular belief, COVID won the last time.
Right. Sure. Very powerful statement. And Rosario, Rebecca, we are coming to you here in just a moment, and then followed with Ippolito Caradonna. Rosario, you do incredible work across the three Americas, Central, South, and here in the United States with your company and your platform. And how do we prepare society for where we're at? It's one thing to have an Apple Vision Pro or a Oculus Connect to come to market and say, okay, here, use this. But this isn't the level of what we're talking about here. We're talking about what's available not only in markets today, but candidly, what we don't know will arrive tomorrow, because I know personally that there's things that are getting ready to come to market within the next 12 to 24 months. And I suspect many of you know others that are building things that are so extraordinary that most of the world have no idea of what's getting ready to come to light. How do we prepare all of these different countries and the nations, transmetropolitan, transcontinental? How do we prepare for this arrival?
Thank you, Chris. I think that there are, and I want to start by a reflection. Some weeks ago, or some like a month ago, we were in La Guajira, Colombia, in the north of Colombia, in a region with indigenous where there is no electricity and there is no internet connection, and we were struggling to create an experience that will show them what immersive realities could be or could mean for their communities. So one of those things that I think that GatherVerse is doing in an amazing way is connecting people from everywhere in the world, because sometimes you only see what you know. So being able to see the other's perspectives can give us two skills as humans. One is, well, what do I know or what do I have that the others doesn't have and I can bring to them? In terms of equipment, in terms of technology, but also in terms of vision, in terms of possibilities. And the second thing that I think that we need to add there is the possibility for every child, but also to every adult, to know that they can dream in a different way. Because right now we are building a new future. We are in a moment where we have the technologies to be able to build a new future, but we need to be able to dream it and know that we can dream something different and we can be part of the team building it. Yes. So, and last, just to wrap up there, when going to decision makers, we need to tell them that it's fine not to know where they are going to, and open the doors to allow others to give them the tools, because sometimes we are coming from a culture where corporate people is not allowed to say, I don't know about that, but I am curious. So we are at that moment where we need to change the human connections. Yes. If I will be a decision maker, I will be here hearing all the GatherVerse event, because of course all these perspectives from different industries, different ages, different generations, different cultures, yes, are the main change that we need to have for the future of these industries and these technologies.
Thank you so much, Rosario. Rebecca, let's go and the same narrative. You're doing incredible things when it comes to business and deployment and really delivering product and helping and being this intermediary figure, but also finding yourself to be an educator when it comes to helping businesses and understand and identify what are the benefits and how they adopt this on their campuses. What does that look from you when we start thinking about the societal impact of how we should prepare public and private sector?
I think a large part of it is understanding and navigating digital equity. So the others have all kind of touched on this as well. And there's been some great comments about access to Wi-Fi and technology materials and demystifying things for educators and also just for, adults who are looking to upskill themselves and develop their understanding of the knowledge within the space. So I do think like a large part of it is, again, just trying to make it as non-threatening as possible so that people feel like they can come and ask questions, and being able to join panels like this where they can come and, see people discussing things and going, okay, well, these people are in this area and even they don't have all the answers. We're still discussing things that we don't know about that are coming in 12 months, that are coming in 10 years. So really kind of trying to understand that the technology of today is not necessarily the technology of tomorrow, and it is still developing, and there are unknown things pertaining to even legal things of authenticity and questions on how we fact check things that we are teaching people and fact check ourselves, and making sure that we understand that what we're talking about might not necessarily be relevant in a few years, and making sure that information is I guess recorded somewhere. So
it's very fascinating that you said that, Rebecca. It seems to me that week to week, the new innovations that are deployed and announced, it's completely making technologies that just seemed so relevant this time last year, completely non-relevant. And I believe that will continue. And in fact, a lot of startups that are receiving an incredible amount of deal flow just last year with the innovations that are coming out from these major corporations and brilliant minds on the startup level. It's completely not just disrupting a few startups, but whole entire funded startups at a rapid clip. And so businesses, you need to be careful what you adopt, because you may spill millions of dollars to something that may be free the very next day to democratize access. And Ippolita, we're coming to you to be able to help close out. When we talk about the preparing for society and the things that you are dealing with when it comes to science, and there's only so much you could say of this, what is the number one thing that we should know coming from the world and the scientific discovery? Because listen, everyone, we're not just dealing with products anymore. We are dealing with science, and we've never come this close to understanding, unlocking, and unraveling things of physics than we ever have before in the entire time of what we've known science to be.
Yeah. This was, I often quote this doctor, his name's Dr. Martin Chafke. He helped discover the green fluorescent protein. For molecular biology, this was revolutionary in terms of visualizing what's happening in a cell, what's happening in that microcosm of the body of our, what's happening inside the tube. And when I sat down and I was able to talk with him, me and my cohort, we were a part of the SACNAS group. This is Society for Advancing Chicanos and Native Americans in Science. He sat down with us and he says, the most important characteristic of a scientist is curiosity. And what he was saying is that in his lab, it's important to keep fresh minds fresh. In the lab, you have to ask the questions that no one else could ask. If you know too much, and I'm trying to frame this in a way that's, I'm surrounded by intellectualism. So when we come to those spaces, like my colleague is explaining, that I can't even say I'm curious, or I can't even say I don't know. Rosario, she framed it well. If you the most important thing that he put at the forefront of his lab was to bring in young scientists that were able to ask questions without even knowing how to get to the answer. It's debilitating to say, you know what, that's just not possible. I've done this for 10, 15 years. This is a quote that we hear often in science. Look, I've done this for decades. Sit down, be quiet. See, that is literally the pain point. That's the point of friction. It's not technology. It's not all of the advancements, because we know that's advancing faster than we can even ask a question.
It's the gatekeepers. Okay.
The gatekeepers, right? So what we really have to do is, it's about what you said at the beginning. It's about communication. How can I communicate and articulate this plasticity of thought? Now the mistakes in a lab aren't mistakes that we need to be worried about. They're like nodes. They're doorways,
Sure.
to discovery. Alexander Fleming, I bring him up often. He discovered penicillin, but he discovered penicillin because he left his plates while he went on vacation, come back to find out, instead of tossing all of his, agar plates, he looked and said, wow, this spot's missing all of the growth. What was happening there? Boom, now we have penicillin. And we were able to revolutionize the way in which we went into war. These types of historical narratives are important for us to be able to keep at the forefront of our hearts and our minds, knowing not just the technology that was discovered, but how it was discovered, but how we're actually tilling that fertile ground, how we're actually being, like I said, good stewards of those fresh minds, keeping the plasticity at the forefront, keeping the asking of questions, keeping the curiosity at the highest importance in society.
Everyone, you've heard the roundtable discussion. Follow these people, get to know them, join them. They're on LinkedIn, they're elsewhere. Spend some time. Continue to evolve. There's a lot that was said today, but we've barely scratched the surface. And yet, here we are at the conclusion, prepared to go further with more, with Alan Smithson coming up with a discussion on HumanX, a keynote presentation. We thank you, panel, for your time, and our gather was well.
Indeed.